Yo, what's up, guys? It's Noah here, breaking down the NBA slate on Draftkings and Yahoo for Wednesday, February the 5th. We're going to cover Wednesday's 9 game slate, go position by position, just talk about the plays that stand out to me the most looking at this slate the night before. We will hit on Draftkings pricing and we'll switch over to Yahoo. We'll talk about a couple guys I like over there as well. Just before we do get started, guys, as always, would greatly appreciate it if you would drop a like down below. If you are new to the channel, if this is your first time checking out a video on my channel, thank you so much for clicking on the video. I greatly appreciate it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. You can click the notification bell as well, so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. I do post a ton of NBA content. I usually get up videos Monday through Friday at the minimum, and then I try and get videos up on the weekends as well, especially now that NFL's over. Trying to get up more NBA content pretty much all week if possible. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell. Also, if you would like, you can follow me on Twitter. Link down below is my Twitter account. I'm pretty active over on there, so if you want to give me a follow, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, you can check out my Patreon content link down below. I do have a lot of exclusive content that I post over there Monday through Friday. I put these YouTube videos up the night before. These are kind of my first look at the slate. I do post a lot of updated content on Patreon throughout the day. As we get updates with injury news and stuff, I can go more in depth on the slate. So if you do want to get access to my updated content, you can check out the Patreon link down below and see all that I have to offer over there. But let's go ahead and start off at point guard today for this 9 game slate. So at the top, we got Trey Young, 10,100 on the road against the Timberwolves. I really like Trey Young today. I think this Atlanta-Minnesota game is going to be one of the best games on the slate to target, just in terms of implied points. Looking at totals for this slate, this game, we have four of the 9 games we do have totals for. And this Atlanta-Minnesota game has a 236.5 total right now, which is the highest out of the 4 games we have. And just looking through all the games, I would expect this game's going to have the highest total on the slate. I mean, it makes sense. You have 2 of the fastest paced teams in the league. The Hawks play at the 3rd fastest pace. The Timberwolves play at the 7th fastest pace. A ton of points should be scored in this game. I think Trey Young at 10-1 makes for an excellent option. Minnesota really not that good defensively. Trey Young had a good game against Minnesota earlier this season, 57 DraftKings points in 34 minutes. We know he's a guy that's going to play 36, 38 minutes if it's a close game, which this game should be. I would expect it to stay close. I expect Young gets his full minutes. And 10-1, I mean, that's still too cheap of a price tag for Trey Young. This is a guy that has 70, almost 80 point upside. We've seen him go for 77 DK points, 77, 73. Like, he's got 70 point upside, like slate breaking upside. Between him and KarlAnthony Towns, I think I do slightly prefer KarlAnthony Towns, but Trey Young's definitely my second favorite stud on this slate. And then third would be a guy like Andre Drummond, who we'll talk about. We will hit on all the studs I like, but Young's definitely up there. He is one of my favorite options to target today. Don't know, at least as of now, I don't think he's going to be a core play. If we can get some more value and I can fit like Young and Cat together, I think that's a route I'm probably going to be trying to go today. But for now, I will leave Trey Young out of the early core. As always, guys, I do have my updated core plays posted on Patreon if you want to check those out. Usually post them about an hour or two before lock, before lock, and then I will update them up until lock. But then other options, DeAngelo Russell, I do like quite a bit in this matchup against Brooklyn, 8,400. There are some trade talks with DeAngelo Russell, so keep an eye on that. Like, he could be traded any day now, and obviously if he's traded, he's not going to play, so that's something to monitor. I wouldn't expect him to be traded like anytime soon. I would expect it to happen like later on in the week if it were to happen. But keep an eye on that. Assuming he plays, 8,400. I do like him against Brooklyn. Brooklyn has struggled against point guards this season. They do play at a relatively fast pace. They're 10th in pace this season. The Warriors are 12th in pace. This is going to be a pretty good game to target as well. So I do like Russell quite a bit. Dinwiddie really disappointed last game with Kyrie out, but I'd be fine going right back to Spencer Dinwiddie, especially in a matchup against the Warriors. This is a spot where Dinwiddie can have a ton of success. He got 31 minutes last game, but a lot of that was due to blowout. I would expect he plays more minutes today if this is a close game, which it should be. 32 to 34 minutes from Spencer Dinwiddie with Kyrie off the floor. He's a 30% usage player with Kyrie off, averages about 1.2 fantasy points per minute. Definitely like Spencer Dinwiddie at 8K. I think him and Russell both stand out in that mid-range. Devin Booker, fine to go to as well, but I think I would slightly prefer Russell and Dinwiddie. Then you got a guy like Chris Paul, SGA. These guys are in great spots today. Point guards against the Cavs. This has been a very profitable matchup to target this season. I believe the Cavs have allowed the most fantasy points to point guards. It's a really good spot for Chris Paul. Rarely do I play him when the Thunder are when they're fully healthy, but Paul has shown a lot of upside when he gets competitive, or when it's a competitive game and he gets his full minutes. When he plays 32 to 34 minutes, I mean, he can put up 45 to 50 DraftKings points. If there was ever a spot for him to do it, it would be against this Cleveland team. I think SGA for a little bit cheaper looks very appealing as well. Both guys are great options in the mid-range if you want to go there. I think I'd slightly prefer Chris Paul, but I'm fine going to both guys. Looking at Yahoo's pricing, you got Chris Paul at 31, SGA's 34. I'd also prefer to go to Chris Paul over there, especially because he's cheaper than SGA. But then other point guards, John Morant's price tag is very appealing. He's down to 6,800. Against Detroit last game, he didn't have that great of a game, and he has really struggled recently. Just the last two games, only 27 minutes. In both those games, 21, 24 DK points. If that's going to keep his ownership down, because the game log doesn't look great, I'd be fine going right back to John Morant. This is a guy that's going to play 32, 33 minutes if it's a close game. That's what he's been playing in close games recently. Got 30 minutes against Denver, 34 against Phoenix, 32 against Detroit. I do like this matchup against Dallas, especially without Luka Doncic. Their defense is a little bit worse. So Morant looks like a solid option. Kyle Lowry's price tag stands out a little bit as well, 6,700. Does feel like a little bit too cheap of a price tag for Kyle Lowry. Then other point guards, in this mid-range, the 6K range, nothing really catches my eye here. Ricky Rubio's price is way down. I mean, he's 5,900 on DraftKings. He was pretty popular on the last slate. Really disappointed. He was 5,500 on that slate. 14 DK points in only 19 minutes. Really don't know what's going on with Ricky Rubio. He's just really struggling as of late. But the price tag is still really reasonable at 5,900. So I could see going to him as sort of a point guard, if you want to call it value, under 6K. Jalen Brunson as well. I was very high on him on the last slate, especially on Yahoo, where he was really cheap. He got the minutes. He played 30 minutes. The production was not good. Only 16 DraftKings points. I think he's still cheap on Yahoo. I'll check that real quick. Yeah, Jalen Brunson's still $16 on Yahoo. This is a big pace-up spot against Memphis. I'd be fine going right back to him today. I don't think he's going to be a core play for me like he was on the last slate. But I definitely do like him in that mid-range. I wouldn't shy away from him just because of a bad game last game. I mean, with Luka off the floor this season, Brunson's averaged over a fantasy point per minute, and in the starting lineup, he's going to play about 30 to 32 minutes. Most nights, he's going to pay off this price tag or at least come close, especially in a pace-up spot. But then other guys we could look to, I do want to talk about Jeff Teague. So I think he really stands out. 5,200 on DraftKings. Last game with both Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter out, they did start Jeff Teague alongside Trey Young. He got the start at shooting guard, played 36 minutes and had 35 DraftKings points. He was very productive. Assuming DeAndre Hunter remains out, we already know that Cam Reddish is going to be out. I would expect Jeff Teague to start again. This is a revenge game for him against the Timberwolves, facing his old team. Just got traded away from the Timberwolves. I like Jeff Teague quite a bit today, assuming those guys are out again. If we go over to Yahoo, he's very affordable over there. Only $12. I think if I'm going to play him, it's probably going to be on Yahoo. Obviously, if DeAndre Hunter plays, then I'm not going to have any interest in Jeff Teague, but I think DeAndre Hunter probably sits this one out again. I mean, he's been questionable the last few games, and he's missed, so I have to assume he remains out. If that's the case and Teague starts again, I think he looks like a really good value option. If he's going to play 34, 36 minutes in a fast-paced game against the Timberwolves, then I definitely like him, even though his price came up to $5,200. I still think he's in play at that salary if he does start. But I do want to talk about Bruce Brown, Reggie Jackson as well. I think these look like two of the best point guard value plays. We do already know that Derrick Rose is going to be out. Reggie Jackson got the start last game. I think they started him and Bruce Brown alongside each other. If I'm not mistaken, that's the route they went. I can't exactly remember, but I think they did start alongside each other because Svi was also out, so they went with Brown. They started Brown at the 3, and then obviously Reggie Jackson started at point guard. Brown was really chalky last slate. He did have a big game, or at least a good game for his salary. 38 minutes, had 27 DraftKings points. Reggie Jackson was questionable heading into that game. Ultimately, he wound up playing. Only got 24 minutes, 17 DK points. Was not a great game from Reggie Jackson. But I would assume that he starts again and probably plays 30 to 32 minutes. I know he burned people on the last slate, but I really like Reggie Jackson again, 4,900. I think Bruce Brown's also a really good option as well. I think you do get a little bit more upside for Reggie Jackson just because he's a better point per minute player than Bruce Brown is. So that's why I do side with him for right now. He's a little bit cheaper than Bruce Brown on Yahoo. If we look over there, Reggie Jackson is $17. Bruce Brown is $18. I think I prefer Reggie Jackson as well on Yahoo. I know it was just like he was questionable heading into that game. Ultimately wound up playing. I think that might have been one of the reasons he only played 24 minutes because he was kind of hobbled in that game. Plus, he shot 1 for 16 from the field, which is like absolutely terrible. I mean, he didn't even shoot 10% from the field. That's not going to happen every game. Like if Reggie Jackson knocks down 40% of his shots like he does most games, I mean, he's still going to put up like 30 DraftKings points. He was still able to contribute with 7 rebounds and 4 assists, so his shot wasn't really falling. That's the reason he disappointed last game. In this spot, at home against the Suns, really good matchup. Don't be scared of that. Go right back to Reggie Jackson. With Derrick Rose out, he should start and play 30-plus minutes, and at 4,900, he's going to be a really good value play today. I know he disappointed last slate, but don't really buy into that. I think Reggie Jackson, one of the better values. Bruce Brown at the same salary is also in play because I think he will get big minutes. If I can only play one, I prefer Reggie Jackson, but you can play Bruce Brown at small forward on DraftKings, which makes him pretty appealing. You could play both Jackson and Brown together. I have no problems with that at all. But I think that's it for point guard plays in terms of value here. So let's go ahead and talk about shooting guard now. We'll look at this position. So you have a guy like Jimmy Butler, 8,500. Jimmy Butler, always a guy I have some interest in when he's like this price. I mean, this is still a guy that has 55, 60-point upside. He dropped 56 DK points last game against Philly in 29 minutes. He shot really well from the field in that game. Against the Clippers, I mean, this is not a great matchup, but this just feels like one of those games that Jimmy Butler is going to play well in. It seems like these primetime games against like these big teams, like Jimmy Butler always plays well. Against the Sixers, Boston, he didn't have that great of a game, but like he had 40 DK points in 30 minutes against the Clippers. At 8,500, he's nowhere near being a priority for me, but if I have salary, if more value opens up, I could see a pan up for Jimmy Butler at shooting guard. I think given the savings, I'd probably prefer like Spencer Dinwiddie for 500 less. You do have Russell with a similar salary, it's close between those two guys. But Butler does look like one of the more appealing shooting guard options to go to today. If Kemba remains out, his status will be big to watch. Kemba is questionable along with Marcus Smart. If both those guys are out, I do like Jaylen Brown quite a bit at 7,300. I know he disappointed last game with only 28 DK points in 33 minutes, but I don't really buy into that. Jaylen Brown's going to get a boost with Kemba off the floor, so he looks pretty appealing in that mid-range. Fred VanVleet's price tag is very appealing as well, 6,900. I think his price puts him in play today. You got Brunson at shooting guard that you can maybe look to if you wanted to go to him. Tim Hardaway bounced back last game, had a nice game, 38 DK points in 33 minutes. Pace-up spot here against the Grizzlies. I think Tim Hardaway, especially with Luka remaining out, Hardaway does get a little bit of a bump in usage. At 5,600, he's fine to go to. You can play Jeff Teague at shooting guard. Brad Wanamaker had a really good game off the bench last game. 27 minutes, 35 DraftKings points. Really benefited from Kemba and Smart being out. His price is up to 5,200, so he's nowhere near as good of a play as he was on the last slate. But if Kemba and Smart remain out, I wouldn't just completely write off Brad Wanamaker. There's a chance he does wind up starting today since he played so well last game. I was very surprised to see him not start last game. I think if Kemba and Smart are out again, Wanamaker might draw the start and would be a pretty solid option at 5,200. Mikal Bridges, never a guy you feel great rostering, but just continues to play massive minutes. Production's kind of inconsistent, but if we're going to get 34, 36 minutes from Bridges against the Pistons at 5K on DraftKings, I could see going to him as a value. Tyler Hero's out, so we will talk about some value from the Clippers that I like once we get like to small forward. But I think that's it for shooting guard plays in terms of cheap options at least. Just looking at this like the night before. We'll dive deeper in my article that I'll post on Patreon. But for now, I think that's what I'm seeing at shooting guard. So let's go ahead and move on to small forward. Kawhi at the top, 9,800 on DraftKings. I just don't play Kawhi when the Clippers are fully healthy. If he gets to a point where his price tag makes him appealing, then you could go there. But I just feel this is a guy that's going to give you probably 45 to 50 DraftKings points most nights when he's playing with Paul George. And that's just not what I want at 9,800. At 9,800, I want him to put up nearly 60 DK points, if not more. If I'm playing him in tournaments and I want that big ceiling game, I need him to put up like 60 plus. And when Paul George is healthy, and Paul George is in the starting lineup, he just doesn't normally post 60 plus DK points. These guys take away usage from each other. They're obviously great basketball players, but in terms of fantasy, I really don't have interest in them on today's slate when you have Leonard at 9,800. PG at 8K, like honestly, if I'd play one of the Clippers, I'd probably take the savings and play PG, but I really have no interest in either one. Not a great matchup against Miami, just not an appealing game. I mean, I don't know what the total is in this game, 223 total. Just really not a game I want to get much exposure to. If Kemba's out again, I think the Boston guys you can go right back to Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward. Gordon Hayward actually got the start at point guard last game. They moved Javonte Green, I think that's his name. They moved him into the starting lineup. Gordon Hayward did get the start at point guard. Green started at shooting guard. Really benefited, had 43 DK points, 24, 7, and 6. I would expect him to get a boost with Kemba out if he remains out. So Hayward, Tatum, both guys look like pretty good options. I think Kelly Oubre's price is pretty appealing at 7K. Andrew Wiggins, never a guy that I play, but in this spot against the Hawks, like he is definitely in play if you want to go to him at 7,400. I think I prefer to get my exposure, though, to Cat, who we'll talk about when we get to center. Love the spot for KarlAnthony Towns. But in the mid-range at small forward, Caris LeVert had a big game last game with Kyrie out. Finally just produced and put up a monster game. Played 32 minutes and had 45 DraftKings points. This is a guy that has like 35, 40-point upside when he gets the minutes. His minutes have just been down recently. Kyrie being healthy takes away usage and opportunity for Caris LeVert. But now that Kyrie is out, like if Caris LeVert, he started that game, if he's going to continue to start and play 30 to 32 minutes, this is a guy that can give you a fantasy point per minute, if not more, especially in a matchup against the Warriors. So even with his price coming up to 5,700, I still think Caris LeVert is in play today at small forward. If you do want to roster him, you also have THJ that you could play at a similar price range. Mikal Bridges as well, Bruce Brown, also small forward eligible, so these are some values you could look to. But the really cheap value that I like at small forward is Derek Jones Jr. So he's 3,900 on DraftKings. We do already know that Tyler Hero is going to be out for the Heat, and Myers Leonard is also going to be out. Last game with both those guys getting hurt, Derek Jones Jr. did play 37 minutes and had 25 DraftKings points. Wasn't the best in terms of his fantasy production on a point per minute basis. Those aren't great numbers, but if he's going to play 30, 35 minutes, like 3,900, especially as an early look value, he looks really good on both sides. He's minimum salary over on Yahoo. If we take a look at him over there, he's a small forward, $10. Definitely think he stands out on Yahoo as well. They could start him. They could maybe start Kelly Olynyk. They could maybe start James Johnson. Not really sure who starts with Myers Leonard out. If it is Derek Jones Jr., I think he's a really good value. Even if he comes off the bench, I still think he gets big minutes off the bench. If a guy like Kelly Olynyk or Johnson were to start, I think they would become more appealing options as well. But for now, it seems like the biggest beneficiary with these guys out is going to be Derek Jones Jr., which makes him a pretty appealing value if he's going to play 30-plus minutes again, which I would expect he would. I mean, let's take a look at the minutes. Tyler Hero, just as of late, been getting about 28, 30 minutes. So yes, Tyler Hero's been playing about 30 minutes a night. Myers Leonard has been playing. Take a look at his minutes. He's been playing about anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes a night. So that's like 50, 55 minutes that's going to be out that guys like Derek Jones Jr. are going to soak up. Kelly Olynyk, James Johnson. I think these guys get the biggest boost. And DJJ, given that he played 37 minutes last game with those guys out, I think he's the clear beneficiary here. It's a less than ideal spot against the Clippers, but the minutes make him a good play, and the price tag as well. Him still being very affordable makes him a good option. But let's take a look at power forward now. So at this position, John Collins looks pretty appealing against the Timberwolves in a fast-paced game. But it's hard for me to go to John Collins when you have Kristaps Porzingis at a similar price range, who just continues to dominate with Luka out. Last two games that he's played with Luka off the floor, 36 minutes in both games, 56, 59 DraftKings points. I don't know why he's still 8,300. I mean, Porzingis should be a 9K player when you take Luka off the floor. This is a guy that's going to give you 45 to 50 DraftKings points most nights, if not more. In competitive games, he's playing 35, 36 minutes. He's back to getting the big minutes that he was getting like at the beginning of the season. And we can take Luka off. I guess we could take Dwight Powell out off the floor as well, since both those guys are out right now. And we can look at Porzingis' numbers. Averaging 1.4 fantasy points per minute, 29% usage rate. The rebound percentage does see a boost up to a 17.5% rebound percentage. Has posted a double-double in both games. 35 points, 12 rebounds, 38 points, 12 rebounds. I mean, Porzingis, if you project him for like 36 minutes with the rates that he has with Luka off the floor, he still projects for like 50, 55 DraftKings points, which is really good at 8,300. The price tag coming up, but he still looks like a top option at power forward. If we go over to Yahoo, look at their pricing, I think Porzingis still underpriced on Yahoo at $36. Looks like one of the best power forward plays. Again, getting to face the Grizzlies, I do like this matchup. The Grizzlies playing at the 4th fastest pace in the league. In terms of defensive rating, they are 20th in defensive rating, so it's definitely a good spot, a spot where Porzingis should have plenty of success. And I know that Joe Val is questionable heading into today, which would make an even easier matchup for Porzingis if Joe Val were forced to miss. But just taking a look at other power forwards, you got the Boston guys you could look to if Kemba remains out. Larry Nance I do want to talk about. So Larry Nance did draw the start last game with Tristan Thompson out. Heading into the slate, at least as of Tuesday night, Tristan Thompson is questionable. Who knows if he plays? I would assume he probably remains out. I don't think they have any reason to play Tristan Thompson right now, especially with how well Larry Nance is playing. I mean, Nance played 42 minutes. I know there was an overtime game, but even at the end of regulation, he had played like 37 minutes, had 39 DraftKings points. Like, they just played Nance a ton, barely came off the court in that game. If he's going to play like 35, 36 minutes again, it's 6,500. That's an expensive price, but Larry Nance is a point per minute guy. He would still project for probably 35 to 40 DraftKings points, which is still really good at 6,500. So I have no problems going back to Larry Nance today if Tristan Thompson does remain out and if he gets the start. Joe Val is questionable, so if Joe Val is out, I think Jaren Jackson Jr. becomes a great option at 6,300. He would most likely start at center, which is good for his fantasy upside. He is more productive when he starts at center whenever Joe Val's off the floor. Other power forwards, though, not really much stands out in this mid-range. Like maybe Taurean Prince, you could look to at 5K against the Warriors. With Kyrie out, I think Prince does get a little bit of a bump, so he's a fine option to go to. If Joe Val's out, I think Brandon Clark at 4,900 becomes a really good option, really good value play. Should play more minutes, which would make him pretty appealing. But I don't think there's really any punt values besides like Derrick Jones Jr., who you could play at this position. So I think that's it for power forward. Let's go ahead and talk about center now just before we end the video. So at the top, as you can tell by the thumbnail, I love KarlAnthony Towns today. One of my favorite plays on the slate. Definitely my favorite stud to pay up for. Just love this matchup for him against the Hawks. I don't see how the Hawks are going to be able to stop him. They really have no one that can slow down Towns. They've been one of the worst defensive teams this season in terms of DVP versus centers. They've allowed I believe it's the 3rd or 4th most fantasy points to centers. This is a great spot for Cat. He put up nearly 61 DraftKings points in only 31 minutes earlier this season against the Hawks. I mean, Cat's back to playing his full allotment of minutes, back to getting 35, 36, potentially 37 minutes if it's a close game. You look at the game log, over 50 DraftKings points in 6 of his last 7 games. Like, it feels like his floor right now is 40 to 50 DK points, and obviously, especially in a spot like this, like Cat has a 65, 70 point ceiling. Maybe you get a little bit of a higher ceiling from Trey Young. Like if I had to pick a guy that would go for like 75, I think Trey Young's more likely to go for 75 than Towns. But both guys just look like such good plays. I mean, I have a feeling I'm going to try and get Towns and Young both those two guys into my lineup, into my main lineup. Because I think that game stack, that stack right there just has so much appeal, especially if more value opens up as the day goes on Wednesday. And that's a route that I can go. That's definitely the route I'm going to try and take. Just love Towns in the spot. He should dominate this Hawks front court. We can take a look at Towns' numbers this season. I mean, this is still a guy that has elite numbers on the season. I know, after he returned from injury, he was kind of off to a slow start, but he still averages over 1.5 fantasy points per minute, 29% usage rate, 21% assist percentage, 17% total rebound percentage. Just elite numbers. One of the best fantasy options you can, or one of the best guys to go to in fantasy right now. Dude's just putting up 45, 50 DK points as his floor. And in this spot, he's got massive upside. So love Towns today. I think Drummond against the Suns also looks very appealing at 9,300, especially with especially with Derrick Rose out. We know Blake Griffin's going to remain out as well. Drummond does get a little bit of a bump with Rose and Griffin both off the floor. We'll take a look at his numbers. with those two guys off. We could take Luke Kennard off the floor as well because we know Luke Kennard's going to be out. I guess we could take Svi off because Svi's also going to be out today. So we'll look at Drummond's numbers with all four of these guys off the floor, see if we get any bit of a sample size. 149 minutes with all those guys off the floor, 29% usage rate, 21%, nearly 22% assist percentage, 27% total rebound percentage, averaging nearly 1.6 fantasy points per minute. Like, those numbers are better than Cat. Obviously, it's a small sample size, but, I mean, Drummond could put up similar numbers to Cat today. I like Cat's matchup a little bit more, but, I mean, Drummond's in a great spot as well. DeAndre Ayton, we know he's not a good defender. He's a good offensive center, but on the defensive end, not a guy that really does well on the defensive end. So this is a spot where Drummond should have a ton of success. He's my next favorite center to pay up for next to Towns. I do prefer Towns. I like Towns' matchup a little bit more, like I said, but I think Drummond's in a great spot, and he's still too cheap on DraftKings at 9,300. Like, with Rose, with Griffin off the floor, Drummond should be a 10K player pretty much every night, especially in this spot against the Suns. But then other centers, I think on the other side of that game, DeAndre Ayton looks very appealing as well against Drummond. Drummond has also really struggled defensively as of late, got abused by Jokic. Joe Val put up a big game against the Pistons. I think Ayton could put up a big game today, so I do like him. I do have some interest in him at 8,300. Joe Val is going to be a big injury to watch. If he plays today, don't have a ton of interest in him, but if he were to sit, a guy like Jaren Jackson Jr. will become more appealing. Brandon Clark as well. I think Serge Ibaka is a fine guy to look to at 6,100. It was a blowout last game against Chicago. That's why I only played 24 minutes. I believe Marc Gasol is expected to be out again, so I think Ibaka plays 30, 32 minutes if this is a close game. The matchup's pretty good as well. The Pacers have actually kind of struggled to defend centers this season in terms of DVP. I think they've allowed like the 6th or 7th most fantasy points to centers. So Ibaka's in play for me at 6,100. Really good matchup for Marquise Chris. Never know what his minutes are going to look like. I mean, 31, 23, 25, 26. If he were to play 30 minutes, I would have some interest in him against this Brooklyn front court, but the minutes are not high, and I mean, he's only going to get like 24 to 26 minutes, which keeps him from being like a core play for me. But there is a value play that I want to touch on at center. Might be a risky option. Honestly, I think he might wind up being really chalky today. We'll kind of have to wait and see, but Daniel Theis has already been ruled out, so Enes Kanter looks like a really good value play. Only 4,200 on DraftKings. I'm assuming he starts with Daniel Theis out. That'll obviously be something to monitor. They could maybe start Grant Williams at center. They could maybe start Jason Tatum at center. We don't really know here. I'm assuming Kanter starts, though, which makes him probably one of the best value plays on the slate. He played his first game back from his hip injury against the Hawks. He was on a minutes limit that game. Only played 16 minutes, but still did what Enes Kanter does, just produces 20 DraftKings points in only 16 minutes. If he starts today and even gets like 22 to 24 minutes, Kanter easily can put up 30-plus DraftKings points in 20 minutes. I mean, we'll take a look at his numbers this season. This is still a guy that averages like 1.2 fantasy points per minute. Let's go to the Celtics. Like, if Kanter were to play like 30 minutes every night, like, he'd be a 7K, nearly 8K player, I feel like. But obviously, he's just not a guy that's going to go out there and play 30 minutes a night. He used to when he was with the Thunder before Steven Adams got there. But just taking a look at Enes Kanter, he has played 679 minutes this season and has averaged 1.26 fantasy points per minute. If Kemba were to sit, I think Kanter does see a little bit of a bump in his numbers as well. So, like, even 22 minutes of Enes Kanter still makes him a really good option at 4,200. If he starts, I think it's possible that he gets like 25, 26 minutes. We'll need to keep an eye on this. I mean, he is probable, so he's expected to play. If he's on a minutes limit, then maybe you go away from him. But at 4,200, like, even on a minutes limit, especially with Theis out, like, he's the only other center they really go to. I mean, against Vucevic, I would expect they need Kanter out there to guard Vucevic. So 4,200, he looks like a great value play today. I do really like him on DraftKings as one of the top values right now. Maybe he's a little bit risky because of the minutes uncertainty, but I'll definitely take the risk on Kanter, especially with how productive of a player he is. Now on Yahoo, I don't think you need to go there. He's $18. There's other guys in that price range I like. If Tristan Thompson's out again, you have Larry Nance for $19, who I would just much rather play over Kanter, but DraftKings is a totally different story. Kanter's all the way down to 4,200. I mean, he's one of the cheapest centers on the slate, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. At least like cheapest playable centers that's actually going to get minutes. I talked about guys like Kelly Olynyk, James Johnson. If one of those two guys winds up starting for Myers Leonard, they could definitely be in play as values, but I think the main beneficiary with all the injuries to the Heat is going to be a guy like Derek Jones Jr. So I think that's it, guys. I think we covered everything for Wednesday's 9-game slate. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I greatly appreciate you watching. If you did enjoy, make sure you drop a like before we get out of here. Make sure you do hit that subscribe button as well. Click the notification bell so that way you get notified every time I upload. And if you haven't yet, you can follow me on Twitter. Link down below is my Twitter account at DFS by Noah. You can also check out my Patreon, link down below. See all the exclusive content I do have to offer over there. My article, updated core plays, my Discord chat, all that is available on Patreon. So check all that out. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Best of luck tonight, and we will see you in the next one. Peace.